Carlos Castenada's The Teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui Way of Knowledge. Part 1, The Teachings, Chapter 1. My notes on my first session with Don Juan are dated to June 23rd, 1961. That was the occasion when the teachings began. I had seen him several times previously in the capacity of an observer only. At every opportunity I had asked him to teach me about peyote. He ignored my request every time, but he never completely dismissed the subject, and I interpreted his hesitancy as a possibility that he might be inclined to talk about his knowledge with more coaxing. In this particular session, he made it obvious to me that he might consider my request, provided I possessed clarity of mind and purpose in reference to what I had asked him. It was possible for me to fulfill such a condition, for I had asked him to teach me about peyote only as a means of establishing a link of communication with him. I thought his familiarity with the subject might predispose him to be more open and willing to talk, thus allowing me an entrance into his knowledge on the properties of plants. He had interpreted my request literally, however, and was concerned about my purpose in wishing to learn about peyote. Would you teach me about peyote, Don Juan? Why would you like to undertake such a learning? I really would like to know about it. It's not just to want to know. Is not just to want to know a good reason? No, you must search in your heart and find out why a young man like you wants to undertake such a task of learning. Why did you learn about it yourself, Don Juan? Why do you ask that? Maybe we both have the same reasons. I doubt that. I am an Indian. We don't have the same paths. The only reason I have said that I wanted to learn about it just to know. But I assure you, Don Juan, my intentions are not bad. I believe you. I smoke you. I beg your pardon? It doesn't matter now. I know your intentions. Do you mean that you saw through me? You could put it that way. Will you teach me then? No. Is it because I am not an Indian? No. It is because you don't know your heart. What is important is that you know exactly why you want to involve yourself. Learning about Mescalito is a most serious act. If you were an Indian, your desire alone would be sufficient. Very few Indians have such a desire. Sunday, January 25th, 1961. I stayed with Don Juan all afternoon on Friday. I was going to leave about 7 p.m. We were sitting on the porch in front of his house, and I decided to ask him once more about the teaching. It was almost a routine question, and I expected him to refuse again. I asked him if there was a way in which he could accept just my desire to learn, as if I were an Indian. He took a long time to answer. I was compelled to stay because he seemed to be trying to decide something. Finally, he told me there was a way and proceeded to delineate a problem. He pointed out that I was very tired sitting on the floor, and that the proper thing to do was to find a spot, a sitio, on the floor where I could sit without fatigue. I had been sitting with my knees up against my chest and my arms locked around my calves. When he said I was tired, I realized that my back ached and I was quite exhausted. I waited for him to explain what he meant by a spot, but he made no overt attempt to elucidate the point. I thought that perhaps he meant that I should change positions, so I got up and sat closer to him. He protested my movement and clearly emphasized that a spot meant a place where a man could feel naturally happy and strong. He patted the place where he sat and said it was his own spot, adding that he had posed the riddle I had to solve by myself without any further deliberation. What he had posed as a problem to be solved was certainly a riddle. I had no idea how to begin or even what he had in mind. Several times I asked for a clue, or at least a hint, as to how to proceed in locating a point where I felt happy and strong. I insisted and argued that I had no idea what he really meant because I could not conceive the problem. He suggested I walk around the porch until I found the spot. I got up and began to pace the floor. I felt silly and sat down in front of him. He became very annoyed with me and accused me of not listening, saying that perhaps I did not want to learn. After a while, he calmed down and explained to me that not every place was good to sit or to be on, and that within the confines of the porch there was one spot that was unique, a spot where I could be at my very best. It was my task to distinguish it from all the other places. The general pattern was that I had to feel all the possible spots that were accessible until I could determine without a doubt which was the right one. I argued that although the porch was not too large, 12 foot by 8 foot, the number of possible spots was overwhelming, and it would take me a very long time to check all of them, and that since he had not specified the size of the spot, the possibilities might be infinite. My arguments were futile. He got up and very sternly warned me that it might take me days to figure it out, but that if I did not solve the problem, I might as well leave because he would have nothing to say to me. He emphasized that he knew where the spot was, and that therefore I could not lie to him, and he said that this was the only way he could accept my desire to learn about Mescalito as a valid reason. He added that nothing in this world was a gift, that whatever there was to learn had to be learned the hard way. He went around the house to the chaparral to urinate. He returned directly into his house through the back. I thought the assignment to find the alleged spot of happiness was his own way of dismissing me. But I got up and started to pace back and forth. The sky was clear. I could see everything on and near the porch. I must have paced for an hour or more, but nothing happened to reveal the location of the spot. Excuse me. I got tired of walking and sat down. After a few minutes, I sat somewhere else, and then at another place until I had covered the whole floor in a semi-systematic fashion. I deliberately tried to feel differences between the places, but I lacked the criteria for differentiation. All right. I felt I was wasting my time, but I stayed. My rationalization was that I had come a long way just to see Don Juan, and I really had nothing else to do. I lay down on my back and put my hands under my head like a pillow. Then I rolled over and lay on my stomach for a while. I repeated this rolling process over the entire floor. For the first time I thought I had stumbled upon a vague criterion. I felt warmer when I lay on my back. I rolled again, this time in the opposite direction, and again covering the length of the floor. Lying face down on all the places where I had lain face up during the first rolling tour, I experienced the same warm and cold sensations, depending on my position, and there was no difference between spots. Then an idea occurred to me which I thought to be brilliant. Don Juan spot. I sat there and then lay my face down at first and later on my back, but the place was just like all the others. I stood up. I had had enough. I wanted to say goodbye to Don Juan, but I was embarrassed to wake him up. I looked at my watch. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had been rolling for 6 hours. At that moment, Don Juan came out and went around the house to the chaparral. He came back and stood at the door. I felt utterly dejected, and I wanted to say something nasty to him and leave. But I realized that it was not his fault, that it was my own choice to go through all that nonsense. I told him I had failed. I had been rolling on the floor like an idiot all night, and I still couldn't make any sense of his riddle. He laughed and said it did not surprise him because I had not proceeded correctly. I had not been using my eyes. That was true, yet I was very sure he had said to feel the difference. I brought that point up, but he argued that one can feel with the eyes when the eyes are not looking right into things. As far as I was concerned, he said, I had no other means to solve this problem but to use all I had, my eyes. To use all I had, my eyes. He went inside. I was certain that he had been watching me. I thought there was no other way for him to know that I had not been using my eyes. I began rolling again because that was the most comfortable procedure. This time, however, I rested my chin on my hands and looked at every detail. After an interval, the darkness around me changed. When I focused on the point directly in front of me, the whole peripheral area of my field of vision became brilliantly colored with a homogeneous greenish yellow. The effect was startling. I kept my eyes fixed on the point in front of me and began to crawl sideways on my stomach, 1 foot at a time. Suddenly, at a point near the middle of the floor, I became aware of another change in hue. At a place to my right, still in the periphery of my field of vision, a greenish yellow became intensely purple. I concentrated my attention on it. The purple faded into a pale, but still brilliant color, which remained steady for the time I kept my attention on it. I marked the place with my jacket and called on Juan. He came out to the porch. I was truly excited. I had actually seen the change in hues. He seemed unimpressed, but told me to sit on the spot and report to him what kind of feeling I had. I sat down and then lay on my back. He stood by me and asked me repeatedly how I felt, but I could not feel anything different. For about 15 minutes I tried to feel or to see a difference, while Don Juan stood by me patiently. I felt disgusted. I had a metallic taste in my mouth. Suddenly I had developed a headache. I was about to get sick. The thought of my nonsensical endeavors irritated me to a point of fury. I got up. Don Juan must have noticed my profound frustration. He did not laugh, but very seriously stated that I had to be inflexible with myself if I wanted to learn. Only 2 choices were open to me, he said, either to quit and go home, in which case I would never learn, or to solve the riddle. He went inside again. I wanted to leave immediately, but I was too tired to drive. Besides, perceiving the hues had been so startling that I was sure it was a criterion of some sort, and perhaps there were other things to be detected. Anyway, it was too late to leave, so I sat down, stretched my legs out, and began all over again. During this round, I moved rapidly through each place, passing Don Juan's spot to the end of the floor, and then turned around to cover the outer edge. When I reached the center, I realized that another change in coloration was taking place, again on the edge of my field of vision. The uniform chartreuse I was seeing all over the area turned at one spot to my right into a sharp, I've never seen this word before, verdigris. I'm going to guess that's some red. Verdigris, verdigris. I remained for a moment and then abruptly metamorphosed into another steady hue, different from the one I had detected earlier. I took off one of my shoes and marked the spot and kept on rolling until I had covered the floor in all possible directions. No other change of coloration took place. I came back to the point marked with my shoe and examined it. It was located 5 to 6 feet away from the spot marked with my jacket in a southeasterly direction. There was a large rock next to it. I lay down there for quite some time, trying to find clues, looking at every detail, but I did not feel anything different. I decided to try another spot. I quickly pivoted on my knees I was about to lie down on my jacket when I felt an unusual apprehension. It was more like a physical sensation of something actually pushing on my stomach. I jumped up and retreated in one movement. The hair on my neck pricked up. My legs were arched slightly. My trunk was bent forward, and my arms stuck out in front of me rigidly with my fingers contracted like a claw. I took notice of my strange posture, and my fright increased. I walked back involuntarily and sat down on the rock next to my shoe. For the rock, what are you doing, Mom? For the rock, I slumped on the floor. I tried to figure out what had happened to cause me such a fright. I thought it must have been fatigue I was experiencing. It was nearly daytime. I felt silly and embarrassed, yet I had no way to explain what had frightened me, nor had I figured out what Don Juan wanted. I decided to give it one last try. I got up and slowly approached the place marked with my jacket, and again I felt the same apprehension. This time I made a strong effort to control myself. I sat down and then knelt in order to lie face down, but I could not lie in spite of my will. I put my hands on the floor in front of me. My breathing accelerated. My stomach was upset. I had a clear sensation of panic and fought not to run away. I thought Don Juan perhaps was watching me. Slowly I crawled back to the other spot and propped my back against the rock. I wanted to rest for a while to organize my thoughts, but I fell asleep. I heard Don Juan talking and laughing above my head. I woke up. "You have found the spot," he said. I did not understand him at first, but he assured me again that the place where I had fallen asleep was the spot in question. He again asked me how I felt lying there. I told him I really did not notice any difference. He asked me to compare my feelings at that moment with what I had felt while lying on the other spot. For the first time it occurred to me that I could not possibly explain my apprehension of the preceding night. He urged me in a kind of challenging way to sit on the other spot. For some inexplicable reason, I was actually afraid of the other spot and did not sit on it. He asserted that only a fool could fail to see the difference. I asked him if each of the two spots had a special name. He said that the good one was called the sitio, S-I-T-I-O, sitio, and then the bad one, the enemy. He said that the two places were the key to a man's well-being, especially for a man who was pursuing knowledge. The sheer act of sitting on one spot created superior strength. On the other hand, the enemy weakened a man and could even cause his death. He said I had replenished my energy, which I had spent lavishly the night before, but taking a nap on my spot. He also said that the colors I had seen in association with each specific spot had the same overall effect of giving strength or of curtailing it. I asked him if there were other spots for me like the two I had found, and how I should go about finding them. He said that many places in the world could be comparable to those two, and that the best way to find them was by detecting them by their respective colors. It was not clear to me whether or not I had solved the problem, and in fact, I was not even convinced that there had been a problem. I could not avoid feeling that the whole experience was forced and arbitrary. I was certain that Don Juan had watched me all night and then proceeded to humor me by saying that wherever I had fallen asleep was the place I was looking for. Yet I failed to see a logical reason for such an act. When he had challenged me to sit on the other spot, I could not do it. There was a strange cleavage between my pragmatic experience of fearing the other spot and my rational deliberations about the total event. Don Juan, on the other hand, was very sure I had succeeded, and acting in accordance with my success, he let me know that he was going to teach me about peyote. You asked me to teach you about mescalito, he said. I wanted to find out if you had enough backbone to meet him face to face. Mescalito is not something to make fun of. You must have command over your resources. Now I know I can take your desire alone as a good reason to learn. You really are going to teach me about peyote? I prefer to call him Mescalito. Do the same. When are you going to start? It is not as simple as that. You must be ready first. I think I am ready. This is not a joke. You must wait until there is no doubt, and then you will meet him. Do I have to prepare myself? No, you simply have to wait. You may have to give up the whole idea after a while. You get tired very easily. Last night you were ready to quit as soon as it got difficult. Mescalito requires very serious intent. End of chapter.